I wasn't even supposed to be at the table yet. That's what makes it worse, I think. She told me not to come out too soon, said they were still lighting the cake, but I forgot my phone inside. And when I stepped back out, something stopped me cold. It wasn't the cake. It wasn't the crowd of people singing happy birthday with less enthusiasm than a tax seminar. It was my wife. Her hand was on his wrist. Not in that friendly, haha, we're old friends way. No, in that gentle, slow-motion way you touch someone when you want them to notice. His name's Corey. I never liked him. Maybe that's a cliché. The husband hating the friend. But it wasn't jealousy, not at first. It was something about the way he lingered around our house, always a little too helpful. Fixing shelves, offering to mow the lawn, texting her memes. Once, I asked her why he had a toothbrush in our guest bathroom. She laughed, said I was paranoid, said he was just around a lot. Back to the party. My party. It was supposed to be small, intimate. A little wine, a few coworkers, her best friend Arya, and yes, Corey, because she felt bad not inviting him. Of course, she did. The whole backyard was decorated with little fairy lights she strung up herself. I saw her out there for hours, sweating, frustrated with the tangled cords. She even picked up those stupid wooden signs that say things like, live, laugh, love, but she painted over them with Happy 37th. Silas. That's me, Silas. Not exactly a blockbuster name, I know. I remember being proud of her, grateful. But then I saw her smile at him. Not me, him. And not just any smile. A smile I hadn't seen in years. The kind of smile you give someone when you feel safe enough to flirt. The kind that says, remember that inside joke we shared? Let's not say it. Let's just feel it together. She laughed at something he said, touched his arm again. Then she reached for the strawberries, the ones she specifically said were for me because they were my thing. She dipped one in chocolate and held it out to him. He took it, bit slowly, smiled back like it was some secret between them, like I wasn't there at all. I stood 5 feet away. She never even looked over. It wasn't rage. Not yet. It was something quieter, colder, like realizing the water's been leaking for years and the damage is already done. You just never looked under the floorboards before. I didn't make a scene. Couldn't. Everyone was around. Toasts, cameras, music. My manager was there. Her yoga friends were there. I just walked back inside slowly, picked up my phone, sat on the stairs, and for 10 minutes, I listened to the sound of her laugh. Kept drifting in through the open window. She didn't come looking for me. Not once. That was the night everything changed. Even though I said nothing, even though I smiled for the photos. But from that moment on, I started watching. And what I saw next would undo everything. The next morning, the fairy lights were still hanging like ghosts from the night before. Half the chairs were knocked over, empty wine glasses scattered on the table. I walked barefoot through the kitchen, stepping over a bottle cap and a half-eaten slice of cheesecake. And I wondered, how could something look festive and lifeless at the same time? Tara came downstairs around 10 a.m., wearing one of my old shirts like it was some badge of closeness. But her eyes didn't meet mine. Not really. She kissed my cheek like someone paying a toll to pass through a highway they didn't want to be on. I remember staring at the spot she touched and thinking, did she kiss Corey like that last night? Or differently? She said the party went well. I nodded. She said everyone loved the playlist. I nodded again, but I couldn't unsee it. The way she touched his arm, the strawberry, the laugh. And I couldn't stop replaying that specific moment when I walked back outside, pretending to need air, and saw them again. Her leaning in a little too close, his hand resting on the back of her chair like he belonged there. What really messed with my head was how normal everything felt afterward. She didn't act guilty. She acted casual, like the night had gone exactly the way it was supposed to. That day, I didn't confront her. I didn't know how. Part of me was still trying to convince myself I'd imagined it, that I was being insecure, that maybe Corey was just friendly, that maybe I was just tired, seeing things, inventing tension in places there wasn't any. But then came Monday. I came home early from work, unplanned. My meetings got canceled, and I figured I'd surprise her. I stopped to get her those almond croissants she likes from the little place on 8th and Maple. I remember thinking how she'd smile when she saw them. that maybe we'd talk. Maybe I'd ask her about the party, about Corey, and maybe, just maybe, she'd look at me like I mattered again. I parked, climbed the steps quietly, and walked inside. She wasn't in the kitchen. I heard voices upstairs, muffled, but one was hers. The other wasn't a man's. It was Arya, her best friend. They were in the bedroom. The door was cracked slightly, and I know I shouldn't have stood there, but something about her tone felt off, urgent. And then I heard it. Her voice, low, sharp. He noticed something at the party. I think he saw us. Arya whispered something I couldn't catch. Then Tara replied, "No, not like that. He didn't say anything, but I saw his face. He knows. I just don't know if he's going to ask." There was a pause, then the words that sucked the air right out of me. I can't stop thinking about Corey. It was supposed to just be that one night. But when he touched me, I felt alive again. I don't feel that with Silas anymore. I feel tired. My hands went cold. The croissants hit the floor. I didn't make a sound. I didn't walk in. I didn't yell or cry. I just backed away, left the house, sat in my car, and stared at the steering wheel for what felt like an hour. She said she felt tired with me. She said she felt alive with him. And suddenly all those little moments, the red dress, the brush of her fingers on his wrist, the way she looked right past me that night, they snapped into place like puzzle pieces I never wanted to solve. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't sleep the next one either. I kept trying to figure out what hurt more. The fact that she cheated or the fact that she didn't even seem conflicted about it, like she was ready to start a new chapter and I was just the prologue she'd already finished reading. But I wasn't going to ask. Not yet. I needed more proof. Words. Something I could hold in my hands and say, "This happened. This is real." Because up until now, everything was still shadows. I wanted the light, and I was about to get it in a way that would destroy everything I thought I knew about her. The morning after I heard her confession through the bedroom door, Tara acted like nothing happened. She made coffee, asked if I wanted eggs, even joked about the laundry piling up like she was still the same wife she used to be. And maybe to her she was. Maybe nothing had changed for her. But for me, the world had tilted sideways. I pretended. I nodded. I thanked her for the coffee. But every second I sat at that kitchen table, every time I looked at her, I saw that moment playing in my head. I felt alive again, over and over. She didn't know I was dying inside. For the next few days, I didn't say anything. I needed more than a conversation between her and Arya. If she ever denied it, she could call it venting or just a fantasy. And if I confronted her too soon, she might shut everything down, cover her tracks. So instead, I waited for an opportunity. Came on Thursday. Tara had a late yoga class, the hot flow, one she always came home exhausted from. She left the house around 6:30, said she'd grab smoothies after with the girls. I waited 10 minutes after the car pulled out of the driveway. Then I went into our bedroom and sat down in front of her laptop. Now, let me be clear. I didn't want to be this guy. I hated the idea of snooping. I used to laugh at people who checked their partner's devices. But I wasn't laughing anymore. I was drowning in doubt. And the only way out was truth. She wasn't logged out. Her email was open. And just like that, the dam broke. At first, it was innocent. Receipts for leggings, Target orders, skincare junk. But then I found a folder in her Gmail labeled Wellness Retreat. That was the lie she used for a weekend she spent out of town last month. She told me it was some yoga escape with Arya. No cell service, just silence and stretching. I had believed her. I even bought her a new duffel bag before she left. Inside the folder were hotel booking confirmations, except it wasn't a retreat center. It was a regular hotel 2 hours outside the city, booked for 2 people, 1 room, king bed. There were Uber receipts, messages, a reservation for a couple's massage. And then came the photos. She didn't even hide them in cloud storage, just attachments sitting right there. I opened the first. It was her in that same red dress from my birthday, except the picture wasn't taken at our house. It was in the hotel hallway. Corey was beside her, holding her waist. They were both smiling at whoever took the photo. It looked casual. Too casual. The next photo, she was in a robe, sitting across from him on a hotel balcony. champagne in hand, barefoot. My hands were trembling. Not from rage, from something slower, something deeper. I don't even have a word for it. It was like grief, but not the kind that comes after death. The kind that comes when you realize the person you love didn't die. They just never existed the way you thought they did. Then I found the messages. She had forwarded several texts to her email, probably to delete them off her phone. One thread stood out. The subject was blank. The body read, "Tara, he doesn't know. I don't think he suspects anything anymore." Her reply, "Are you sure?" The way he looked at me during the toast. Corey's response, "He was just being dramatic. He never says anything to my face. That's who he is. Passive. Soft." Then another from her, "So what now?" And from him, "Now we wait. Once you figure out what you want, you'll handle it. He never says anything to my face. That's who he is. Passive, soft." That one cut the deepest. I sat there for a long time, long enough for the screen to dim, long enough to hear her car pull up the driveway. I didn't even move. I just closed the laptop slowly and left the room before she could walk in. That night, we lay in bed like nothing was wrong. Her scrolling through her phone, me staring at the ceiling, pretending to fall asleep before she could ask me anything. But my mind was racing. Not just with anger, with something else, with strategy. I knew the old me would have begged, cried, asked her to choose me. But I wasn't going to give her that. I wasn't going to make it easy. If she wanted to feel alive, I'd give her a moment she'd never forget. I just needed the right one. And as fate would have it, the perfect opportunity was coming. A dinner. Her parents. Corey. She thought she had control of the story. She had no idea I'd already turned the page. The invitation came the next morning. Tara was all smiles. A cup of coffee in one hand, her phone in the other. "Hey babe," she said, sitting across from me like she hadn't just emotionally buried me the night before. "Mom wants us over for dinner Friday. Just us and them, and Corey. She thinks he's funny. You don't mind, do you?" I looked at her. Not in anger, not even confusion, just calmly. The way you look at someone who's standing in a burning building and doesn't realize it yet. I said, "Sure, sounds nice." It didn't sound nice. It sounded like my own execution. But I agreed because I needed more. I wasn't ready to confront her. Not while she still thought I was the spineless fool in her forwarded messages. The more she underestimated me, the more power I had. And that power was all I had left. The days leading up to the dinner passed like an unbearable play where everyone knew their lines except me. Tara kept acting like we were fine. She texted me funny videos during work, kissed me on the forehead in passing, asked if I could pick up almond milk. Like she was slowly reattaching the wires, convincing herself that everything was still working, that I hadn't seen behind the curtain. But everything she did now felt staged. Every gesture, every glance. And I watched her with new eyes, noticing how she smiled at her phone just a little too long, how she took extra time in the mirror after brushing her teeth, how she'd go outside in the evening just to take a call and speak in hushed tones. I didn't need to ask who it was anymore. Friday arrived. I wore a shirt she once complimented. Navy blue, a little snug around the shoulders. She wore something subtle, beige with a gold chain around her neck. Not the red dress. That one was for him. When we pulled into her parents' driveway, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, still. Something colder. A quiet decision. Like I'd been waiting for someone to tell me how to handle this and finally realized no one was coming. The dinner was excruciating. Her mom talked about gardening. Her dad complained about politics. And there he was, Corey, sitting directly across from me, laughing, smiling, pouring wine like he owned the table. I watched him place his hand on the back of Tara's chair more than once. Subtle, practiced, like he was doing it just under her parents' radar, but directly in mine. Tara barely looked my way. She kept turning to him during stories, finishing his sentences, laughing too quickly. I didn't exist. Not to her, not to him. I was the placeholder, the legal name on the lease. Her father asked me how work was going. I said it was fine. He asked if we were planning a vacation this summer. I looked at Tara and said, "I think she's already made plans. She froze for just a second, but just one, then smiled. "We'll figure something out," she said, brushing it off with a sip of wine. Corey raised his glass to me and said, "To Silas, the man of the hour." I raised mine, held his gaze, and smiled. "To secrets," I said. "The ones we think we hide well." There was a pause, a barely noticeable flicker in Tara's eyes. Her mother didn't catch it. Her father didn't either. But Corey, he did. His smile twitched. His fingers clenched slightly around the stem of his glass. No one said a word about it. The conversation moved on, but the seed had been planted. Later that night, back at home, Tara asked, "What was that toast about?" I shrugged. "Just something I read earlier," I said, pulling my shirt over my head and tossing it on the chair. "Secrets are interesting, aren't they?" She didn't respond. She just stood there, watching me, like for the first time in weeks. She wasn't sure what I knew or didn't know. The air shifted again. I waited until she went to bed, pretending to be doing emails downstairs. Instead, I wrote out every single thing I discovered. Every receipt, every screenshot, every message, every date. I created a folder on a flash drive. I labeled it "Happy Birthday, Silas." And then I started printing, page after page, quietly feeding them through the printer in my office while she slept 10 feet away, her betrayal humming like a song between the walls. I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to scream. I was going to show her what it felt like to be invisible. And the first step was letting her believe I was still blind, just long enough to watch her walk directly into her own disaster. The following week was one long, slow theater. Tara kept playing her part and I kept playing mine. She cooked dinner twice, which she hadn't done in months. She asked about my coworkers. One evening, she even asked if I wanted to start watching a new show together, something she'd seen trending. I smiled and said yes. I smiled a lot that week, not because I was happy, but because I had something she didn't know I had, a deadline. Friday night, 1 week after the dinner with her parents, 1 week after her boyfriend toasted me like I was a joke and she sat there letting it happen. That Friday would be the end of something. I wasn't sure what exactly. Our marriage, our civility, maybe just my patience. But it had to be something. And I wasn't going to let it pass like the others. I printed more. Burned 2 copies of the flash drive. One for her, one for someone else. You'll see. By Thursday evening, the tension started to show on her face. She was quieter, distracted. She asked me twice if I was okay, and I told her both times, "I've never seen things more clearly." She blinked at that. She knew something was off. Not because of what I said, but because of what I wasn't saying anymore. I wasn't asking about her day. I wasn't noticing her new earrings. I wasn't checking to see if she was coming to bed. I had detached. And maybe for the first time, she started to feel it. Friday arrived. That morning, I woke up early, earlier than her. I stood in the kitchen watching the sunlight stretch across the countertop, listening to the sound of her soft snoring from down the hall, and I felt nothing. No sorrow, no anger, just silence. I packed a small bag, not because I planned on running, but because I didn't want to come back after. I didn't want to be in that house after the look on her face. I knew what was coming. She didn't. At exactly 4 p.m., I walked into my office, opened the envelope I'd prepared, and made 2 deliveries. One was dropped into the outgoing mailbox with no return address. The second I placed gently inside the top drawer of her nightstand. It would take her hours to find it. But the big moment that came at 7:30. We had plans. A restaurant she loved. I'd made the reservation weeks earlier, before I even knew what I would use it for. She wore a black dress, subtle makeup, heels I hadn't seen since our 4th anniversary. She asked if I liked how she looked. I told her she looked beautiful. It was the truth in a way that hurt. The drive was mostly quiet. I let her pick the music. She didn't say much, just hummed along to a Fleetwood Mac song, tapping her fingers on the edge of the window. Maybe she thought we were healing. Maybe she thought the new version of me, the calm, patient one, was me forgiving her silently, accepting things as they were. She didn't understand yet. She was too comfortable. The restaurant was dimly lit with candles on each table and soft music playing in the background. A little upscale but not showy. Our server knew her name. She'd clearly been there with someone before. She ordered confidently, "Filet, red wine." I just smiled, ordered the same, and waited. Halfway through the meal, I pulled out a gift box. She looked surprised. "What's this?" she asked, her voice rising slightly. "A little something," I said, passing it across the table. She opened it slowly, pulling off the ribbon with careful fingers. Inside was a single, folded sheet of paper and a flash drive. Her smile faltered. "What is this?" "Read it," I said quietly. She glanced around, as if checking if anyone was watching, then unfolded the paper. Her eyes moved line by line, and I watched the color drain from her face. The list was short but deliberate. Hotel reservation confirmation, February 17th. Receipt for champagne and strawberries. Message to Corey. He's too soft to do anything. Photo, hallway, red dress, hand on his back. Forwarded email thread. Subject line, "Finally." Voice memo attached from your bedroom, March 3rd. She looked up, her mouth opened slightly, but nothing came out. "You said you wanted to feel alive," I said, staring right at her. "I hope you feel it now." She dropped the paper, tried to slide the box back toward me. "Silas, wait, I can explain." But I wasn't finished. "Also," I said, pulling out my phone, "you might want to check with your boss on Monday. The same drive is on its way to HR. That's when she really panicked. "You sent this too? You're trying to ruin me?" "No," I said. "I'm giving you exactly what you asked for. A new life. One where I'm no longer your burden." She started to cry right there in public. People were beginning to notice, but I didn't care. For once, I didn't feel invisible. I stood up slowly, dropped a 50 on the table, and said, "Dinner's on me. Good luck explaining the red dress to your parents." She grabbed my wrist. "Please, Silas, please don't do this." I was stupid. I got caught up in. But I leaned down, looked her right in the eyes, and whispered, "You killed us the night you forgot whose birthday it was." Then I left her there, surrounded by candles and stares, holding evidence of her own destruction. I didn't go home, and I didn't look back. I didn't answer her calls that night or the next. I left my phone on, not because I wanted to hear her voice, but because I wanted her to know the line was open and that I still chose silence. She called 7 times in a row on Saturday, then nothing for a few hours, then 3 more at midnight. A few voicemails, none of which I listened to. I didn't have to. I could hear her panic through the phone even before pressing play. I stayed at a small roadside motel 30 minutes out of town. Nothing fancy, one of those places where the curtains are always half closed and no one asks why you're there alone. I sat on the bed, still dressed, replaying the image of her face across the restaurant table. That mix of confusion, humiliation, fear. Not just of being caught, but of losing control. It was the first time in a long time I'd seen her without the mask. For years, I had tried to keep the peace, swallowed emotions, convinced myself that maybe all marriages go through phases. Maybe I wasn't being romantic enough, exciting enough. Maybe Corey was just her way of feeling something again. But that night, as I stared at the yellow light flickering above the bathroom mirror in that cheap motel, I realized something far worse. It wasn't just about feeling alive. It was about killing the part of her life that was connected to me. And I let her. Until now. By Sunday, I had packed up everything that mattered to me, which turned out to be a depressingly short list. A few clothes, my laptop, 1 photo of my parents, a baseball glove I hadn't touched in years. The rest I left behind. The house, the furniture, the wedding album we never finished. All hers. The only thing I kept was the flash drive and the pain. That afternoon, I sent a message to her father. It was short, respectful, and attached with no explanation. "You once told me that family is about honesty, even when it hurts. I wish I had learned that lesson earlier. Please take care of your daughter. You'll need to." I never got a reply. That evening, as I stood in line at a gas station getting a sandwich and a black coffee, I saw her name pop up on my screen again. But this time it wasn't just a call. It was a video message. I hesitated. Then I pressed play. She was sitting in her living room, looking straight into the camera with makeup smeared under her eyes and a blanket draped around her shoulders. Her voice cracked almost immediately. "Silas, if you're watching this, I just want to say I was wrong. I didn't mean for any of this to happen like this. I don't know what I thought. I just wanted to feel something again. You were always there, always steady. I didn't realize how much that mattered until you weren't." She looked away for a second, then back. "I told Corey not to contact me again. I told him it's over. He didn't even fight it. That says something, doesn't it? He never loved me. Not really. But you put up with me. You saw me. And I betrayed that. I betrayed you. I'm sorry." She paused. Her lip trembled. "If there's any part of you that still wants this to work, I'll do whatever it takes. I'll delete everything. I'll go to therapy. I'll change. Just please, come home." I watched it 3 times and I felt nothing. She wanted to feel alive. So did I. So the next morning, I rented a storage unit and placed everything I'd saved from the marriage into a single plastic bin. The glove, the photo, and the flash drive. I labeled the box "Closure." Then I bought a bus ticket one way to, well, it didn't matter where. Only that she wouldn't know. Only that for once, she would be the one left staring at the door, waiting, wondering, feeling the weight of absence in a space she never thought could be empty. But this story wasn't finished yet. Because just when I thought I had escaped, just when I thought I'd finally silenced her voice in my head, something happened that pulled me right back in. Something I never expected. She found me, and she didn't come alone. It had been 17 days since I vanished. 17 days since I walked out of the restaurant, leaving her with a flash drive and her lies unraveling one by one. I didn't block her number. I didn't need to. She stopped calling on the 5th day. I figured maybe she'd finally accepted it. The silence, the absence, the consequences. Maybe she realized that there are some apologies too late. Some truths too poisonous to repair. I was staying in a small town no one's ever heard of. Population barely a few thousand, one grocery store, no stoplights, and a motel where the ice machine had been broken since the Clinton administration. It wasn't glamorous, but it was peaceful. I got a part-time job at a hardware store just to stay moving, fix things with my hands so I wouldn't be stuck in my head. I ate alone. I read. I slept like a man who had nothing left to lose. I was starting to forget the sound of her voice, and I liked that. That morning was quiet. Mist was still clinging to the treetops outside my window. I was sipping burnt coffee, flipping through a used book I'd picked up for $1, when I heard a knock. Room 7. I didn't expect anyone. I hadn't told a soul where I was. I assumed it was the motel owner needing something, or a mistake. But the moment I opened the door, my whole body froze. It was her. Tara. And she wasn't alone. Beside her stood Arya, her best friend. The same Arya I'd overheard weeks ago whispering in our bedroom about how Tara had fallen for Corey. The same one who had helped cover it all up. The same one who told her not to tell me. They looked completely out of place, polished, dressed too nicely for the cracked cement lot outside my motel room. Tara looked tired. Her hair was pulled back, her makeup minimal, her eyes red. Arya looked worse. Her face was pale, her hands shaking slightly, her eyes darting between me and the floor. I didn't say anything, just stepped back and left the door open. They came in silently. Tara stood in the middle of the room like it was a courtroom, and I was the judge she hoped would still listen. Arya leaned against the wall, her arms crossed tightly, like she was bracing for impact. Finally, Tara spoke. "I know I have no right to be here. I know you don't owe me anything. But I need to say something in person, and you need to hear what she has to say, too." I glanced at Arya. She couldn't even look at me. Tara went on. "Corey's gone. Not just out of my life. He's in jail." I blinked. "What?" Arya stepped forward, finally speaking. "He was blackmailing her. That night at your birthday, the photo with the red dress. He took more than just that one. After you walked out, things got worse. He threatened to send things to her employer, her parents, even you, unless she kept seeing him. I shook my head. No, that's not true. I read her messages. She wanted him. She said she felt alive. Tara's eyes filled with tears. I did. First. I'm not pretending I didn't. But when I tried to end it, he turned. He said he'd make my life hell. And he did. Arya added. He showed up at her office, followed her home, broke into her car one night, and left her underwear in her own mailbox. She filed a report. Nothing happened. But then he threatened you. That made me flinch. He said he'd send things to your workplace, destroy your name, accuse you of being abusive, said you were unstable. He even forged emails with your name in them. Tara was crying now. That's when I realized I'd handed my whole life over to a man who never cared about me. Just power. I was scared, Silas. I didn't know how to fix what I broke. But then Arya came clean. She told me what I didn't want to hear. That none of this would stop until you knew everything. I leaned back against the dresser. My heart was pounding, but not from anger, from confusion. From the sudden rewriting of the past I thought I understood. Why now? I asked. Why come here? Arya looked me dead in the eyes. Because you deserve the truth. And because it's not over. He's getting out on bail, and you need to know what he's planning. Tara reached into her bag and handed me a folder. Inside were printouts, threatening messages, screenshots, a copy of the police report, photos of her car keyed down the side, her tires slashed, a screenshot of a text from an unknown number that read, "Let's see how quiet he is when I show the world what kind of man Silas really is." I dropped the folder on the bed. My hands were sweating. "I don't want you back," I said flatly. "Whatever this is, it doesn't change what you did." Tara nodded slowly. "I know. I'm not asking for that. I just wanted to warn you, and to say goodbye the right way." Arya walked to the door, already fumbling with her keys. Tara lingered a moment longer. "For what it's worth," she whispered. "You were always more than enough. I was just too selfish to see it." And with that, she was gone. I stood there for a long time, staring at the door after it closed. My hands trembled, not with rage, but with the weight of a new kind of grief. One that comes not just from betrayal, but from realizing how much darker the truth really is. Qley wasn't just a mistake. He was a threat, and I wasn't done running. Not yet. Took me a long time to open the folder again. For days, it just sat on the edge of the motel dresser, collecting dust, a silent monument to a past I hadn't asked for, when I thought I'd finally outrun it. But something about seeing Qley's threats on paper made it real, tangible, ugly. And I realized then that this wasn't just about heartbreak anymore. It was about safety, about choosing to protect my name, my peace, my future. Not for her, not in reaction to him, but because I finally understood I was worth protecting. The police did what they could. It wasn't much, just a promise that they were monitoring the situation. But it didn't matter. I wasn't afraid of Qley. Not anymore. Not because I believed he'd stop, but because I'd already done the hardest part. I let go. I moved out of the motel 2 weeks later, found a small apartment above an old bookstore in a town even smaller than the last one. The owner, a retired school teacher named Earl, gave me a discount on rent just for fixing up a broken window and repainting the balcony rail. I took the job. Then I took another, working afternoons at the bookstore for tips and coffee. Not glamorous, not exciting, but real. And quiet. God, the quiet was everything. Some nights I'd still hear her voice in my head. Not the part where she cried or begged or said she was sorry, but the line that haunted me most. "You were always more than enough." That one stuck with me, not because it made me feel better, but because it finally felt true. And the strange thing was, I didn't need her to say it anymore. I started to believe it on my own. I started running again. Nothing long, just a few blocks at sunrise. Sometimes I'd stop and sit on a bench near the park, watching the sky change colors over the rooftops. It felt like something sacred. Those early hours, like proof that life moves forward, even if your heart's still limping behind it. Arya texted me once. Just one message. "He's gone. She's okay now. Just wanted you to know." I didn't reply. Not because I hated her, not even because I hated Tara, but because that chapter was done. I'd written the last sentence, closed the book, and put it on a shelf I'd never reach for again. Then one day, something unexpected happened. I was ringing up a customer at the bookstore, a woman in her 30s, curly brown hair, soft smile, looking for a poetry collection. She said she was new in town, taught art classes. We talked for maybe 5 minutes, but when she left, she turned back and said, "You look like someone who's been through hell, but you also look like someone who made it out." I didn't know her name, but those words, they stayed with me. That night, I looked in the mirror and saw what she saw. Not a victim, not the ghost of a husband, but a man with scars who hadn't let them become cages. I still keep that flash drive, not out of bitterness, but as a reminder of what I survived, of who I used to be, and of how far I've come. So here's the truth, the kind I never thought I'd write. I'm okay now. No, better than okay. I'm free. And for the first time in a long, long time, I don't feel invisible anymore.